Hello. We are talking about LGBT poetry and spoken word. We are two LGBTs.
All of the letters.
And so I want to start by talking about our experience and how that has informed our own writing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've found that your sexuality has informed your writing in any way.
I think it, the way I came sort of into writing poetry was originally just a way to play around with language and rhyme different things and try different structures. And then eventually over the years I try to actually write about things that are kind of relating to me and my life and my feelings and opinions and stuff like that. And I think when you're kind of starting out, you're probably in a place where you're looking for inspiration from other people, or you want to see what's the done thing, as it were. You probably get inspired to write poetry because you read or hear other people's poetry. And then that's kind of your starting point. And so, bearing that in mind, when I was a teenager and I was kind of figuring out that I am bisexual, I noticed that a lot of the narratives in poetry and just in pop culture and in music is obviously very, women falling in love with men and vice versa. So there's surprise. So I found it interesting, especially now when I look back on the things that I've written, or maybe when I've tried to make more of a conscious effort to address bisexuality and themes related to it in my poetry, that I just find it easier to find inspiration for, romantic or relationship things relating to men, or a quote-unquote heterosexual relationship, as opposed to, women writing about other women. Yeah. So when I write about a man or a relationship with men or experience that I've had there, it just feels like, this fits in with the cultural narrative, and I have a background to place my work against. Yeah. And when I try to write about women, it just always feels a lot more clumsy, and it feels you're just less sure of what you're writing, because you don't really see it reflected in the work, in the poetry, and then in general kind of pop culture around you. So from that angle, because bisexuality is kind of seen as straddling this divide of the gay world and the straight world.
Yes, yeah. And then, as opposed to being bisexuality.
Yeah, it's and anything that's in between those things. Yeah. Surprisingly, gender is not a binary. Blah blah blah. So it's from that angle, I find it quite interesting if I'm trying to really think about my work, or try to consciously make an effort to write about one thing as compared to another thing. Just the discrepancy between those two, topics.
Yeah, I really like that, actually. That's really interesting to me, because in my experience of writing poetry, I really struggle to write quote unquote gay poetry, from much a similar way as yourself. I find it to be very clumsy, and it doesn't help the fact that I'm a very clumsy writer to begin with, but I struggle to write a piece that encompasses something that is as broad as sexuality, which is so many things to one person, and you can't summarize that one thing. It's almost as if asking someone, what's your straight poem? Do you have a straight poem?
No, those are just called love poems.
Those are just called love poems, and I think that I really struggle to write about that. One of the things that I did find helpful for myself is I really did make a conscious effort to move to deliberately using he pronouns in my in second person address love poems, which was a very big step for me. I don't know if this is something that you think about when you are writing. Who are you addressing, and how you are giving that away? Because I feel like for me, that's often the only point that I give away that this is not a straight poem.
A lot of what I write is either in the first or the second person, which obviously allows you to be a lot more ambiguous.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm just trying to think in terms of what I've written before. A lot of the time it's not very explicit, and there's like people I write about that are like coded slightly more masculine or more feminine in one way. I've not written much where it talks about she or her, or anything like that. I've tried to, because like you said, but sexuality as a whole is such a big topic, and it's important to you.
Yeah.
So you want to address it properly and express yourself, and it is the kind of thing where you're sitting there and you want to make a conscious effort to write about it, and just sum it up well. And then you're thinking, where do you even start? And on that note, I think that is one of those things where like straight people never have to think about that. You're like, no, this is the default or the norm. This is the cultural backdrop we have. And then if you want to write about your experience or this other experience, I think you have to, or you get kind of pushed into wanting to explain it all, because that's not like the cultural landscape we operate in. It's
a very I feel normative view of sexuality to say that the only difference is the gender of the person that you're loving. Like, my gayness is not simply my partner's, it influences so many different aspects of my life and my existence. Like, for example, I actually write a lot about faith and religion, and that's very heavily influenced by my sexuality. And so, but I think people would have a little bit of a strange time thinking about my poems where I'm talking more explicitly about religion and faith and say that's a gay poem. Whereas like, I am a gay poet.
Yes.
Therefore, all of my poems are gay poems, surely. But I think that is, I think that's one of the reasons why I find it difficult to be, to talk about gay poetry in that way. I think it's maybe a little bit more easy for us both being people who have organized nights for LGBT communities, talk about the particularities of doing that. I don't know if you've had any realizations of the differences that come from that.
In terms of the poetry night and who the audience is? Or?
Yeah, in terms of, or the feel of the night even.
Yeah, I think, because, going off what I said earlier and what you've just said now, when it comes to wanting to explain everything about your sexuality because you feel people won't get it, if you organize a night specifically for like your uni's LGBT society like we've done, or maybe an LGBT History Month night where the audience is at least going to be receptive to that kind of content. I think
once a year.
Yes, we get 1 month. But I think that takes away that need to have to explain yourself, right? So while I would say overall the spoken word community or the crowds that you usually get at open mics is quite progressive and open-minded.
Yeah.
On a tangent, it's also a bit echo chambery in a lot of ways for like
Really?
progressivism and left wing and etc. But so there is the idea, or the experience that I've had is that audiences tend to be very accepting and open. But as an LGBT person, you're always like erring on the side of caution. So if there's an LGBT poetry night or open mic night, I think people are just more able to express themselves freely, because there's not that, but what if there's that one homophobe in the crowd type of a thing. And also like you don't feel like you have to explain yourself or your
There's
work.
There's a virtue to being explicit as opposed to just implicit in if you are a space for the LGBT community. And part of that is even just practicality. If you are operating your night in a space that does not have the facility to have non-gendered bathrooms, then that is something that's not just about who you're putting on stage. It's the space that you're inviting people into that they might not feel safe in. And the people that are you in an open plan bar area, or are you in a more quieter area? And I think that those are all things that aren't necessarily talked about in organizing nights for LGBT people.
Yeah, I think even beyond just addressing an LGBT audience or inviting LGBT people to your night, when it comes to running spoken word nights, I think that there's an idea of this is what poetry looks like, or this is what an open mic looks like, or this is how it's done. Like it's always at X time in a pub or a bar, and and then you start to think about, well, a lot of these venues are not accessible for people with disabilities, or if someone has issues with alcohol, they might not want to be in a venue.
Or they're underage.
And then again, if it's not an explicitly, I guess, safe space for LGBT people, they might not want to put themselves out there or hold themselves back in some way, maybe even like unconsciously. So I think, a lot of people think, but we are, we're chill, we're a progressive audience, it's all fine. But I think you still need to have, for the time being, I guess, spaces that are specifically designed as safe spaces for self-expression. Not even from the standpoint of like you're gonna get a homophobic heckler or anything, but just that you're in a room with people where they'll just get it.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain
and they will provide
yourself.
you with the resources to look after yourself.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. I think those are really good points. And I think we will draw an end to the conversation there. There's obviously more to say.